Thank you, Anders. Thank you very much to the organizer. It's a great pleasure to be here again. Well, this is not a Hispano-Spanish affair, because just 500 meters away from here, well, let's say a part of this ideology, which is right now defended by the government, Spanish government, is right in front. It's at the University of Vienna, at the Institute of Political Studies. So, but this is the first comment I would like to show you, that most of these, let's say, principles are violated on the name of the pandemic by some governments. Mainly, well, as I tried to show, is the Spanish government, which in fact is an alliance of social and communist alliance, as you probably know. So, I don't know. No. Okay, so this is not really an original idea from Spain, but is the influence of some South American countries. Well, not only from Cuba, which is traditional, the important influence, but also from Venezuela and also Bolivia. Well, the current government in Spain, headed by Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, which belonged to the Socialist Party, has an alliance with United We Can, Podemos. In fact, this group has some subsidiaries across Europe, including Vienna as well. So he took advantage of the situation, of the weakness of the former government in Spain to become prime minister. So when he was in office, legally after the mechanism that was used at that time, which is the motion of no confidence, and there is nothing against this situation. But later he got the alliance of different groups which are not very democratic. In spite that, well, some of them, they try to convince the population that, well, they are the championship of the democracy, and everyone knows what communism is. And, well, myself, I was living in the Soviet Union in the time of Chernenko and Gorbachev, and also, well, it was at that time I was at the Spanish embassy, and I know I didn't learn this on books, but I really live. But what is the origin of this ideology in Spain? Where they got the influence? They got the influence, as I said previously, from some regimes in Latin America, but the door was the Faculty of Political Sciences of the University Central of Madrid. It was a group of professors from that university which tried to create a group of new ideology to convince people that politicians at the national parliament were not representative of the population. Well, this is one of the most known activities of this group, because when they were in power, when they were in office, well, they really decide and think in a different direction. So this is, let's say, the first steps to show you what is the present situation of the Spanish, the current Spanish situation. Well, once upon a time, COVID arrived. And what has happened? That the Spanish Constitution has enough regulations to protect people against different situations. But the problem is that government should use this in the right way. And the question is that the Spanish government didn't. For instance, the government decided to establish the first state of alarm, which is regulated in the Constitution. But it was limited for 15 days, and they have to go to the parliament to suffer the control, to be controlled by the parliament, which is the sovereign body in the country. So they didn't respect the limitations of the Constitution. And they start practicing some anti-constitutional methods. Well, it was a very easy way to act for the opposition, because it's, as Churchill said, the parliament is never under quarantine, and the parliament cannot be shut down, even in the case of war. But the Spanish government did it. So in the second state of alarm, during more than 6 months, they didn't appear in the parliament. So this was one of the most dangerous situations since Pedro Sanchez became an authoritarian prime minister, even if he arrived in office by democratic methods. So under this situation, what happened in Spain? Vox is a so-called extreme right party. Well, the left called them fascist, but they were the only one who asked the constitutional court to act, because it wasn't legal. It wasn't legal what they were doing. So in this, under this situation, I think it was under this situation, Vox decided to apply to the constitutional court, and finally, recently, in 2 occasions, the constitutional parliament, the constitutional court decided to support this this party against the decision of the government. So, what the government started to use? Well, it is not very dangerous that in office there, no matter what kind of political party. What is not democratic is that they violate systematically the situation, the rules and regulations, and they use the economy just to get enough support. For instance, they subsidize all the media which are with the government policies. But in the opposite side, well, they criticize and even they create, the Minister of the Interior decided to order the police to control those media who decided to publish information against the government. So this is what is really dangerous in a democratic system. But the problem doesn't finish here, because Podemos is a communist, has a communist ideology. So they really want to replace the current political system into a different system. But it's not a matter of political system, but it's also a matter of changing the economic system to another one which everyone knows that it was really a great fiasco, like in the Soviet Union and other Eastern European countries. So, well, this is one of the decisions taken just recently, last October, where you can see that, well, the government decision has affected seriously to the control of the government. So, there are other projects that are currently very seriously to be considered. Well, the connections with the countries I mentioned previously, like Venezuela from the times of Hugo Chavez, and which has transformed Venezuela in a totalitarian regime, starting with different tools: the control of media, the control of judiciary power, the education, price control. So everything should be under control, okay, of the government. But after the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe, well, as you know, the Sao Paulo Forum started their activities and later on were transferred to the Puebla group in Mexico. But who are the Spanish representatives in those fora? Well, one of the most important is José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, who is a former prime minister, socialist prime minister. And the other one is the Mrs. Irene Montero, which is the current Minister for Equality. And she belonged to Weekend Podemos. So can you see that connections are very important in these activities, and they are transferred from South America to Spain. And this is what they are really doing, not only at the level of education, but also at different level of control of other activities. So they try to control the judiciary power, and this is not new, because at the time of Felipe González, at that time his vice minister, his vice president declared that Montesquieu passed away. Well, probably he killed him. And they don't respect the rule of law, and the situation is right now very difficult for the Spanish democracy. But as I told you, I explained at the beginning, this is not only a Spanish problem. It's a situation that is getting also other countries in Europe. And I insist, including this country. Austria. And finally, what I really would like to say is that, sometimes some groups criticize Mr. Orban in Hungary or Prime Minister in other Eastern European countries. But Prime Minister in Spain is doing the same. Everything is under his control. They appoint judges, they appoint the government of the central bank, and also different agencies. And this is very dangerous. This is really dangerous to have every day in life, because nobody knows what will happen overnight. Well, here, as conclusions, I would like to just to say that, the Latin American populism, which comes through Podemos in Spain, has already arrived in Europe. And the second one is that the pandemic situation was an alibi for the government just to encourage some political decisions against democratic principles. The national security law is another initiative, another policy of the government where they can make the intervention of your properties, and you cannot do anything. So everything, even your own properties, your money, your house, the government can take it in case they decided to do it. And, the target of the social communism government in Spain, in fact, is to destroy the traditional structure of Spain with new ideologies and mainly the political inheritance of the country and the Constitution of 1978, which put an end to the dictatorship of Franco. So this is a challenge. This is really a huge challenge, and that's why it's important that this situation will affect also foreign investments, the unemployment rates, and the productivity of the Spanish economy, and also the entrepreneurial activity. Well, I have to say, finally, that a minister of the current government has his own monetary policy, because he doesn't know that the European Central Bank has the monopoly of the monetary policy. Well, he decided, and he declared, you can check it on the newspapers, that to fight homeless people is to print money and to deliver to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. This was really alarming news for me, perhaps for more of you. Has anyone any question about this? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Spanish. I'm from Valencia, so I know about the political system. But my question will be, like, since all the majority of the parties in Spain, they are not only lefty, it's more like social democracy, only social democracy. Like, how you're going to fight socialism and communism without having any party that defends liberty and as a libertarian or an Austrian economics system, because all the other parties are just social democrats, like they are just in the same level but not that left. Thank you.
Well, not all the parties in Spain are social democrats. There is a wide range of political ideology. It's true that the socialist is really very a very important ideology in Spain since the times of the dictatorship, even at that time. Well, the first socialist prime minister was Felipe González, and well, he was supported by the German Social Democrat Party, Willy Brandt. And well, right now, there are different political parties. For instance, Podemos, which is the far left party, just has only 5 years old. They started as youngster shouting in the streets and all this, but finally they decided to go in front of the parliament. But aside from the Socialist Party, there are other parties like Partido Popular, which, I don't try to defend Partido Popular, which is, let's say, the center-right party, because what they really want is to replace the Socialist Party in office. So it's not really to transform the society, because they have a majority during 8 years, and they didn't do anything. They didn't remove former decision of former socialist countries. So, and there is another one, which is Vox, that I mentioned in my presentation, but they are considered as the extreme right, if you want. But I don't believe it. I don't believe it. It's true that they have some ideas that they are not compatible with democracy, but it doesn't mean that they are anti-democratic.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your talk. But I feel as what you said as a big exaggeration. You can't compare in any way Spain with Venezuela or Cuba. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry. There is no dictatorship in Spain. There may be abuse of power of the government, but there is no dictatorship, because as long as they do not change or put out of function the constitution and the constitutional mechanisms for overturning majorities through elections, there is no dictatorship. And I think there is a problem from precisely people who object to this abuse of power to exaggerate and create the atmosphere of living in a dictatorship. That has a long tradition in Spain, and it has precisely caused civic division and civil wars and so on. I think you should refrain from these exaggerations and analyze the situation as it is. You are still living in a democratic country, in a government which is not which you do not support, of course, and that has most probably abused of its power, taking advantage of the pandemic. That's also that may be true, but you are far away from a dictatorship. Because that would be a different constitutional setting, and precisely what is proper to Venezuela and most probably to Cuba is that they have a different constitutional setting, or they have changed it, or they putting out of work the democratic mechanism of in a peaceful way overturning majorities. That's the proper of a democratic state. If you disagree with the government, and even if it abuses its powers, which it can do as long as the constitutional court does not, just call it back. So as long as that is the case, that you can that the democratic constitution is in work, you cannot talk about dictatorship. So you have just to work to win the next elections. You have to win the next.
I didn't say Spain is a dictatorship. I said that it's an authoritarian government. Well, and in fact, I can tell you that what you mentioned, this is what the Venezuelan people thought before Hugo Chavez arrived. This will never happen in Venezuela. I have some friends. They are not rich people. They are very simple people living in Spain. They left Venezuela, and also Cuban, but Cuban is something that's very far away from our time, at least the times of 1959 is very far away from now. But the case of Venezuela, and also Ecuador as well, and now Nicaragua, that many people from those countries are presently living in Spain. I know some of them, and they were telling me, well, we never thought that it will happen that what happened in Cuba will happen in Cuba or in another country. And I never said that Spain is a dictatorship. It's not. It's an authoritarian government, because you can read any paper from the left and from the right. Because, frankly speaking, I vote twice in my life in Spain. First, I vote to the Socialist Party, to Felipe González, because I couldn't vote the party who was in power during 40 years during the dictatorship, the real dictatorship of Franco. And the next time I vote Aznar, which is the center right, because he was my classmate at the university. So, but, and finally I realized that, well, in Spain there is not a democratic tradition. It will take some more years from now.
You agree with that? Yeah. So we have to, thanks for interesting discussion, and thanks you very much.
Thank you.